ready to get started. We have a lot to cover in the next 40 minutes. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar on Dynamo. As the title of the session suggests, we're going to be looking at how Dynamo takes Revit to the next level. And in the next 40 minutes, we'll be having a look at Dynamo and what it is and why it's important. We'll see a live demonstration of Dynamo working together with Revit, and 3 different very practical examples of how Dynamo can improve your day-to-day Revit tasks. We'll then have a look at a number of case studies for Cadassist customers who are using Dynamo to improve the way that they use Revit at the moment. And then finally, armed with that knowledge and information, we'll have a look at some of the next steps that you might want to take with Dynamo. So my name is Gordon McGlathery. I'm the training manager at Cadassist. I'm going to be co-presenting today with Paolo Bisgard, who's a BIM consultant at our Autodesk partner BTech Data. And for those of you who do not know Cadassist, we are an Autodesk Gold partner and an authorized Autodesk training center. We've been supporting Autodesk solutions for the past 25 years, and my role in running the training business, which I've been doing for the past 12 years, well, one of my roles is making sure that we at least try to stay out in front of demand for new applications and technologies. And Dynamo's been on our radar for a while. It's very exciting technology, and it does represent an entirely new way of working with Revit. So let's have a look. So what is Dynamo? Well, Dynamo, first of all, is an open source free add-in for Revit. It's not developed or owned by Autodesk. However, if you own Revit, or certainly Revit 2015 or 2016, you actually already have it. It currently ships with Revit. And what Dynamo is by using Dynamo together with Revit, it actually turns Revit from a BIM tool into a computational BIM tool, and it does that by extending the functionality of Revit beyond what the Autodesk developers originally put in the software. And the way it does that is it adds logic and intelligence to your model. So this is a diagram here of a Dynamo script, and all these little boxes on this diagram are little chunks of intelligence, logic, decision-making, if you will, that when you string them together allows you to create very powerful applications for handling complex geometry and handling complex data. And one of the great things about Dynamo is that, yes, it is a programming environment, but it's a very visual one. So it's not just for programmers. It's very easy to learn, very easy to use. It's really for any serious Revit user. Now, why Dynamo is important is, together with Revit, it means that you can take a Revit model and add behavior to that model that's a reflection of your design intent. So whatever rules that you have for your design, Dynamo lets you incorporate those rules into the model itself. So rather than having a building model, as you would with Revit, using Dynamo together with Revit, you actually have an intelligent building system that behaves in the way that you want it to, saving masses of time, and the benefit of that, of computational BIM, if you will, is that by automating a lot of the tasks that you do manually in Revit, by being able to make decisions more quickly, you're able to focus on the design, exploring different design alternatives, allowing you to let Dynamo do the hard work in Revit, and freeing you up to focus on ideas and let the modeling documentation, or the drawing documentation, just fall out of the process. So, in fact, a recent survey of industry professionals from the Journal of Information Technology and Construction clearly shows the positive impact of incorporating computational design into your BIM workflows. So that's a very quick overview of Dynamo in terms of an explanation. Now let's see it in action. I'm going to pass over to Paolo now, who has 3 different live examples of how Dynamo can improve your day-to-day Revit work. So Paolo, over to you.
Thank you, Gordon, and thank you for the nice words in your presentation. In this example, I'd like to show you some examples I have brought up for daily based work, because I think you can find many examples on the World Wide Web where you can see these beautiful designs that can be made with Revit and Dynamo. For the example here, on the presentation here, I would use this quite standard building. It's a floor flats, and it's located here in the area. For those of you who don't know Dynamo, then you will see here is the interface. For the example, I'd like to make a new script, and I'd like you to notice the search package manager. The search package manager is where you find all the custom scripts that have been made from the user worldwide, and you can nearly find any kind of nodes that you like to use here in the search package manager. And here you see the library where I have my search in my local library, and you have each node here in the library that you also can look up yourself. But for, as you will see in the presentation, then the search bar is very used in Dynamo. The example I'd like to show you here is an issue that I've seen in database work with Revit. That when I look at the door here, then you would see that it's an exterior door as a function, since it's been located between the hallway and the staircase. And if I look at the wall itself, then it seems that it's an interior wall, which I would consider as a mistake. So I'd like to use Dynamo to figure out how many places in my model do I actually have that issue. So what it does is to start up saying, I'd like to search for a category, and in this case, the category I'd like to search for would be the door, because the door can only be located in one wall, but one wall can include many doors. So to see the result of my input output node here, then I would use a watch node. The watch node would show me the results of any cases. And now you see the list of doors in my Revit model. It is so that you see these green dots here in Dynamo, that it's actually a button that would ask Revit to find the door itself by, like you know, in search by ID in Revit itself. And the ID, the number here, reference to the element ID in Revit. To see what information can I get out of the all element of categories node here, or of the elements itself, which would be the door, then I'd like to search for the element parameter. And the node you will see here, I'll take out the output to the input and the result seen here in the watch node. The result will show that all the information I can get out of each instance of the door. And one of the information I'd like to look at would be the family types. So to see the information itself and work with the parameter itself, then we'll say get parameter. Volume. Is coming up here, the nodes. So I'll bring the element in as an input, and I make a string called family, like you saw in my watch nodes, and you will see the results here. Now I have the information about the family name or type of the door itself, and if I bring then these elements or these family types into my element parameters, then you will see that my list of information is now changed. So the information I'd like to get out now would be the function, since the function is the information that I'd like to check on. string here, place it up, and then you see the result. The result is now, you see, is a 0 and 1 value, which is referenced back to the interior or exterior value in Revit. The next thing I'd like to look at in Dynamo would be the host of the door, which I would do by the string called host ID. If you have any issue of knowing what is the name of these parameter name, then you just use the element parameter like I showed you before. The watch node would now show me that the host ID would be walls, and you have all the IDs here that I can search for in Revit. And since it's the same information I'd like to bring out of the walls as it's door, then I just make a copy paste, and in this case bring in the elements, which would be the walls, and here you see the list of 0, 1 as you saw at the doors. So now we like to work with the information about the exterior interior information. So it is so that if we say the 0 value would be an interior or reference to interior information, then I know that if I have a plus 0 plus 0, then it will give me a value of 0, which would be an interior door and wall. If it's exterior, then it would be in 1 plus 1, and it gives a value of 2. So in that case, where I have an issue between the values, then it would give me a result of 1. So now I'd like to figure out all the cases where I have a 1 value. To do that, I change the values to a string, because then I can search in the values. So what it does here is to make a string from object, and ask Dynamo to say, does the string contain? In this case, you will see it's going to be a bit messy here in my script. Bring up the input export here. The value I like you to, the string I like you to search for would be the 1, and I read it as a string because I changed the values to strings. And to know if you should ignore the case, then do that with a boolean node. So let's see the result of my string contain. And here you see that if it would give me the information true or false. That information I like to use as a mask in my list by boolean mask. And the list I like to work on is the element, which were the doors from the first nodes here. So bring that into my list, and then you will see that we have a list, 2 lists now in Dynamo, which would be the input and output, which was referenced back to the true and false value. That information I'd like to write back in Revit so that I can see it in Revit. So to do that, I say set value by name, and it doesn't show me here. Set parameter. Set parameter by name. I'd like to do that twice since I have 2 lists. So I bring the elements in and out to the 2 set parameter value by name. The parameter name I like to write it back to would be the comments. I hope you're all familiar with the comment field in Revit. So like that. And the value I like you to write in those cases where there is an issue would be issue. And for those who don't have an issue, I like Dynamo to write OK in Revit. So let's see the result in Revit. I'll bring up my previous view here. And here you see that now the doors are colored red, and just simple because I've made a filter in this view for the door issue. And you will see that the door itself now have a value in the comment field saying issue. So if I go in and change the value and work with the walls here, you say now it's an exterior as a type, then the script will run in the background, and now you see that the door has changed the value to OK. So that's just a small example on to show which information can I get out of Revit by using Dynamo, and how can I handle and treat this information in Dynamo. Just simple example. To show another daily based work, then I have set up an example here. And what I've done previously is to make a couple of masses, just simple masses. And in my project parameters, I made a new parameter called calculation zone, which is a type parameter. A type of a parameter is a text. It can be any kind of a type parameter that I like it. The categories I've chosen for this example is the mass and the walls and the windows. I could choose any categories that I would like to work with. So what I like to do is now to split up my building in different calculation zones. And I say this first example here, first mass would be an A calculation zone, next I would call B, and here in the basement I would say it's in a C calculation zone. Then I bring up Dynamo here and ask it to run my script. But before I do that, here you see the script is a bit more messy than the previous script I made, but it might look messy, but actually just repeating of itself all the time, so it's quite simple in the base. What it does here is to read the mass and say, okay, what is the parameter that you like to read from the mass, in this case the calculation zone. What do you else like to read on? I like to read on the walls, and the information you should read on from the walls is the calculation zone. And I'd like you to work with, not this case, not the stairs, but the windows. Just show you as an example. So what it does now is that when I press run, let it work in the background, is that it brings in the masses, the walls and the windows. And then Dynamo sees, does the walls and the windows intersect with the mass? If it intersects with the mass, then it would say, okay, what is the information saying in the masses calculation zone, which would be A, B, and C. And that information you will bring back to the wall and the windows and give the value of A, B, and C to the calculation zone, according to which mass it intersects with. This script can be used for many cases where you divide your building up in areas. It could be for fire zones, it could be for floor heating areas. It could be, for instance, you're saying which departments do you have around the building. It could also be used to set the information in the rooms, like which floor finish, ceiling finish, and so on. So in that sense, it can be used for many examples in the database, where you're splitting up your buildings in areas. And it is actually, for me, is an example that have been used for in the daily work by a company itself. So what I can see is that also that is an easy way to do it, and it is a lot of information that Dynamo read through, so that's also why you can see that it works a lot with the information. But it might take a bit of a while, but it will take much longer to do it manually, and by the manual work you will also have the issue that it might be that you make a mistake. And here you see that the view have colored the walls, but that's just simple because that I've built up on a filter here to show you easier how is the information spread around. And if I look at the wall here, then you see the calculation zone now is an A area, and here you have the B value in the pink area. But if I look in the white colored wall here, then you see that there is no value in the calculation zone. That's just simple because that the mass doesn't intersect with the wall, so it doesn't give any information. It would also handle if the masses was intersecting with each other and bring both value from each masses to the walls. So that was another example on how to use Dynamo in daily work. The last example I'd like to show you here would be for the room numbering. That I've seen that in the room numbering, when you work with the room numbering in Revit, it doesn't have any reference back to which level is the room located on. But many examples, for instance, schools, hospitals, office buildings, then the room number itself has a reference on what level is the room located on. So here I built a script to handle that case. So what it does here is that it's looking in the category of the rooms and then seeing in Dynamo, in Revit, is the room itself placed? Is a placeholder design? Does it already have a reference to the dots that I have put in as a separator between the level name and the room number? And has it any intersection with, is there somebody who giving a fake level number? So all these things Dynamo would control for me. So by just pressing run here, then you would see that it changed all the room numbers and read out the number of the level, not the whole level name, but just the number of the level, and place that into the room number together with the dot as a separator. So that was just another example on how to use Revit, Dynamo in your daily work with Revit. I hope you liked the examples, and with that I'd like to give my word back to Gordon that would bring you along.
Okay, thanks Paolo, that was terrific. Some great examples of using Dynamo in day-to-day Revit work. I'd like to carry on now with some more examples of that. We've had 4 Cadassist customers that have contributed some of their applications for using Dynamo and Revit together to give everyone in today's webinar an idea of just what's possible. The first example is by Cohn Pedersen Fox. Now KPF are implementing Dynamo throughout their practice, and it's having an impact on every project that they're delivering right now. And the example that they wanted to share today is an example of how Dynamo is particularly good at data management and data verification. So they use Dynamo. In this instance, they're showing their ability to collect, collate, and present area data for large-scale Revit-based master plans for up to 100 buildings all at the same time. So they have a need to quickly sort and filter and export data for many individual buildings. They need to do that simultaneously. And this script here that we see is a result of this work. And what this does is it, first of all, takes a series of Revit models and exports the, after it's sorted and filtered, it exports the data into a schedule. And then a second script then takes that schedule and creates, in effect, a second model, a graphical representation of the room volumes as masses, so they can analyze the building usage or building usage across a number of buildings at the same time. And at the same time, they use the same process to extract and verify metadata relating to a whole range of different Revit categories. And according to Martin Coyne, the BIM manager at KPF, using Dynamo to process and export data lets our architects spend more time designing and less time formatting data. Martin's a big proponent of Dynamo. In fact, if any of you are heading to the Revit Technology Conference in Budapest at the end of October, you can sit in on a talk that Martin is doing on Dynamo and why it's dynamite for schedules. Secondly, AHMM, they're using Dynamo again in a range of different applications to solve a range of problems. From the computational BIM side of things, they're using Dynamo to build intelligence into their models for, in this instance here, placing furniture or any other type of category on a grid system without having to place these categories, these families manually. So as you can see here, it's a fairly simple script, but what it does is it allows them to automate the placement, in this instance, of furniture. So if you want to build in a rule that for every desk in a floor plan there will be a bin, for every 20 desks there'll be a photocopier, and so on, all those rules can be built into your Revit model, saving time. Other ways that they save time, particularly from a model management standpoint, they use Dynamo for doing things like finding hidden CAD files that are lost in a Revit model, or being able to select a range of Revit files to find their version and build without opening each file individually, or creating a dummy list of sheets using the project drawing numbering table. For all these reasons and many more, according to Aaron Perry, the BIM manager at AHMM, being able to run one definition to review and audit a file and keeping it healthy is a massive time saver. It extends the value of the product that they're already using, and it helps automate certain time-consuming tasks. Thirdly, BDP. Now, BDP are terrifically excited about Dynamo, and they're implementing it across their business. They've come up with a number of examples here. The first is basically using Dynamo in effect as a property painter, and put it in very simple terms, but being able to create modeled floor finishes from room geometry, and then define that data in the floor finish parameter, creating new floor types and assigning materials and modifying instances and type parameter information all in a single click. So making decisions about how one particular room needs to look from a finish standpoint, and then apply that to all rooms within a project. Secondly, similar to KPF, using Dynamo to represent information graphically so they can make decisions quicker and faster about their design. BDP use Dynamo to interrogate model data and display the results graphically. So here they're showing us an example of being able to use Dynamo to produce a graph collating data from any parameter, any category, and isolating that information, color coding it, and then showing it in the 3D view. So data that they don't want is transparent. Data they do want is color coded in a certain way and then represented this way. So saving them a terrific amount of time. Now this is another very clever application of Dynamo. BDP are looking for ways to improve the way that they audit models, and they needed to quickly isolate errors and fix them. And they used Dynamo to take the warnings report from a Revit model and take an HTML export of that report, then plug it into Dynamo, and then have Dynamo automatically create a view, in effect, a model of those warnings, a warnings model, and that allows them to quickly identify problems, fix them, and as they go through, they can continue to run that script, and that model will get less and less populated until it's empty, and then they know that the model's accurate. There are many other examples BDP using Dynamo, batch production of room panoramas via A360 cloud rendering, optimization of room geometry for import to IAS. There's a whole range of them. And one of the biggest benefits to BDP of Dynamo is that instead of having to, according to Alex Shovelton, one of their BIM managers, instead of relying on the availability of third-party plugins to solve problems, they use Dynamo and create an adaptable solution that's tailored to the way that BDP works. So they own the customization rather than having to rely on a third-party plugin. Finally, Grimshaw Architects. Dynamo is also absolutely central to their strategy for using Revit, and they're integrating Dynamo into virtually everything that they do, and they're continually finding ways of using it to save time. One great example they wanted to share with us here is, well, I guess if you imagine for a second how long it takes for you as a Revit user to place interior elevation markers throughout a large project. Okay, and then now imagine firstly that you're able to create a project parameter for rooms that tracks rooms with internal elevations, and then using Dynamo, imagine that you're able to define the level of that elevation and then filter out any rooms to exclude. and then imagine that you're able to place interior elevations in each room, name them according to the room that they're in. Imagine you're able to automatically then go back through the project parameter and untick the rooms that you've completed, and then imagine that you're able to automatically place each room's associated elevations onto an auto-named and auto-numbered sheet. Imagine how much time that would save you. Well, that's what Grimshaw Architects have done. And according to Mark Thorley, the BIM manager at Grimshaw, with Dynamo we can turn days of menial and repetitive work into minutes, allowing more time to design. Turning days into minutes, literally creating time, more time for their designers to design. Now, Grimshaw Architects tell us that actually Dynamo is such a transformational technology that those who are using Revit on its own will soon be left behind. So if you wanted to get started with Dynamo, some of the next steps that you can consider is, in order to get started, is first of all, get the software. Download it from dynamobim.com. It's a free plugin. I did say earlier that it does ship with Revit software. However, you should also know that that Dynamo is continually being updated and upgraded. It's every month there's new release. So bookmark that website and make sure you always have the latest download. Some very good learning resources and tutorials on Dynamo BIM as well. Get involved. There's a very active Dynamo community online where experts like Palu and others are giving their advice freely on Dynamo scripting. Get connected to your local Revit user group. Some of them are running Dynamo Hack Nights, where you would bring your scripts along to a 2 or 3 hour session, and everyone has pizza and works through their scripts, getting advice from experts for beginners, novice, advanced users. Some of the more active Revit user groups are in Manchester and London. I know that the Manchester user group had a Dynamo Hack Night last month. They're planning another one between now and Christmas. They're also looking to hook up with the London Revit user group. So contact your local Revit user group and find out when the next Dynamo Hack Night is. In addition, you want to develop your skills with Dynamo. A couple ways of doing that. I mentioned earlier, there's the RTC conference in Budapest at the end of October. Those of you that are heading over to Autodesk University in Las Vegas in December, a whole range of Dynamo sessions being run at AU. They were actually the most popular of over 800 workshops that were offered at Autodesk University last year. We expect the same to happen this year. So if you're going and you haven't already booked those, I'd suggest that you do that quickly. If heading to Budapest or Las Vegas isn't in the budget, there's some local solutions for developing your skills. Through Cadassist, we have developed 3 different courses on Dynamo. I said earlier, it's very easy to learn, so there's a 1-day course that covers Dynamo Essentials, and then 2 separate advanced workshops on advanced geometry and advanced data management. You do need to attend the Essentials training before you can attend either of the advanced workshops. But there is a regular schedule of courses up on our website, cadassist.co.uk. If you go to the training section and look at Book Now, the dates and all of our pricing is available there. So I'd suggest bookmarking that page so you can see what Dynamo courses are happening and where. Stay in touch with us via Twitter, information on future webinars. Stay in touch with our technical team here via our blog site, www.cadblog.co.uk, where you can keep pace with Dynamo and other topics from our technical team. And follow us on Twitter. So that's a 40-minute overview of Dynamo and how it takes Revit to the next level. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and found it useful. I'd like to personally extend a special thank you to 4 customers who took time to assist in the presentation and share some of the very exciting applications for Dynamo. Very special thanks to Palu for his top Dynamo tips. And on behalf of Cadassist, thank you all for watching.